Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So in the last session we looked at three meanings of a nas, and obviously a nas has more than these three meanings, but these are three more common meaning, and we are concerned with only first meaning because that's the meaning of a nas. It's relevant to usul fiqh and al-kalam. Okay, now the second one is Al-zahir. And once we know Al-zahir, we will be able to know what is at-tawil. And now a word, the possibility have either it has only one meaning, and that's a nas. We covered that. Another possibility here that it has more than one meaning. Now in that case, in the context, those more than one meanings either have equal force, so they are equally convincing or relevant. So in the context, they can mean either of those. So one meaning is not more overwhelming than others, so their force is the similar or equal. Then in that case it is called Al-mujmal. That is, it is not clear, so it needs al-bayan or exposition of. So that's not via. So we al-mujmal can become clear when we look at other verses or other evidence, etc. And a lot of disagreement among the fuqaha al-millah and al-mujtahideen is when the verses are al-mujmal. They are susceptible to more than one meaning, and no one meaning has clear, overwhelming force, and they have equal persuasive power in the context. And it is obviously intentional from Ash-Shari, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet, because they want us to use our reason, and in that sense it is rahmah. Now, if there's more than one meaning, so and all the meanings are equal force, then that is al-mujmal. That's unclear. And if they have more than one meaning, but one meaning has clear, immediate, overwhelming power, like one meaning is what we call a rajih. So word has more than one meaning, but it is clear from the context that one meaning is the intended meaning. So that meaning is called Al-zahir, and Al-zahir mean manifest, but here what we mean is overwhelming. So even though there are more than one meanings, one meaning is overwhelming. So in that case, unless there is some other persuasive, non-linguistic evidence, we take Al-zahir as a clear evidence or hujjah. And Al-zahir, this overwhelming force, is linguistic. Linguistically, one of the meaning is clearly more immediate and more overwhelming in the context in which we are talking about, or in which we are considering that word. So for example, let's say, so go back to, we say an-nas is, in our context, only one meaning is possible. There's no other meaning possible. In that case, this doesn't need any tawil. It's hujjah, clear hujjah, and its tawil, as they say, is tanzil. So just listening to it is its interpretation. By listening to it, you know that what it means. You don't need any other interpretation, any other tawil. Now, if there are more than one meaning, then you have two possibilities of a word. Either those more than one meaning all have similar persuasive power linguistically, so they can, any of them can mean in that context. In that case, that is Al-mujmal. It's unclear. The word is it need exposition or bayan, which can be done through other verses, and that's where the difference of opinion comes. Now, if there are more than one meaning, but one of the meaning is linguistically overwhelming, persuasiveness, that is ar-rajih, and others are underwhelming or al-marjuh, then that meaning which is overwhelming is called al-zahir. That's what called al-zahir. And al-zahir is not like a nas, because there are more than one meaning and there are more than one possibility, but it's more closer to nas in the sense that one meaning has overwhelming linguistic immediate force, linguistic force. In that case, unless there is other non-linguistic reasons to not take that overwhelming meaning, we must take that overwhelming meaning and follow it, and that would be the evidence or hujjah. So for example, just easier example, so if somebody say al-haywan al-muftaris, sorry, so So predaceous animal. Now in this case, obviously when you talk about al-haywan al-muftaris, more than one meanings are come to your mind, and but one meaning is linguistically overwhelming. So, and that meaning is al-asad, or lion. Must have been lion, rather than, for example, a brave man, because brave man is not its literal meaning. So unless there is some other non-linguistic reason that you have to mean brave man, you must take al-haywan al-muftaris to mean lion rather than a brave man, unless there is some other overwhelming non-linguistic reason. And that other non-linguistic overwhelming reasons are called tawil. Tawil mean in the language of usulis, tawil mean هو صرف اللفظ عن ظاهره المتبادر. So that's its immediate overwhelming linguistic meaning. So at-tawil is to divert a word from its zahir, its overwhelming immediate linguistic meaning, minhu ila, to, muhtamal marjuh, bidalilin, but that must be because of some overwhelming dalil or evidence. So when you divert an immediate overwhelming meaning from its linguistic meaning to another non-overwhelming meaning, that is called a tawil, and it must be based on overwhelming reason, a dalil. Otherwise that tawil is fasid, unacceptable. So for example, the zahir meaning of al-haywan al-muftaris is lion, al-asad. That's its zahir meaning, it's overwhelming linguistic meaning. But unless you have something else, and tawil is to mean by it a brave man or woman. So this tawil is acceptable if is good reasons, non-linguistic reasons, and it is unacceptable if there is no reason. So in the case of zahir, we go by zahir unless there is some other reason which makes it inappropriate to take the meaning of the literal meaning. For example, in poetry, it might happen that taking literal meaning isn't, even though it's is the overwhelming literal meaning of the word or the phrase is not advisable, because in the context of poetry, for example, it's obvious that it means brave man, for example. Similar things happen in the Quran. And we will see in Imam Radi's Al-Qanun Al-Kulli, he talks about diverting zahir to non-zahir meaning because of the reasons. And his reasons is that, for example, if we take a zahir meaning, for example, that gives a conception of deity which is not compatible with Islamic conception of deity, for example. Okay, so now we can go back and define al-zahir again and more. So let's say al-zahir is a word which has two meanings. Meaning 1 and meaning 2. And al-zahir meaning is the overwhelming literal meaning, or linguistic meaning is called. This is what we call zahir, ar-raj. And the underwhelming linguistic meaning is called al-marjuh. So we always go with the overwhelming linguistic meaning. Now, if for some other reason, some non-linguistic reason, we have to reject the zahir meaning and make this marjuh meaning overwhelming meaning, this is called ta'wil, at-ta'wil. And this ta'wil is two types, acceptable and unacceptable. It's only acceptable if there are good reasons for doing that. For example, I gave the example of in the context of al-kalam, which Imam Razi. Because if we take zahir, then it doesn't give us the conception of God which is compatible with other Islamic tenets, according to Al-Razi. So it's not always clear cut, and people can always contend, and that's one of the reasons people have difference of opinion. So that's completes the zahir. Maybe we can give some more examples of Quran. So like in there are a lot of examples, but didn't want to go into other debates. So, but for example, a hadith, Rasul Akram said, "Ayyuma imratin nakahat aw unkihat bighayri izni waliha." Any woman who imra فَنِكَاحُهَا بَاطِل بَاطِل بَاطِل, then her nikah is batil, is invalid. وَنِكَاحُهَا بَاطِل بَاطِل بَاطِل, 3 times. Now, imra in Arabic language has more than one meaning, in the sense that it is a woman, yeah, but it can be applied to a younger woman, older woman. But its zahir meaning, or overwhelming literal meaning, is any woman, whether it's whether it is young woman or older woman or middle-aged woman or a woman who was married before or not. Okay. Linguistically, its overwhelming meaning is any woman. Now, if somebody says that by here imra means only young woman, or non-adult. So a girl. Then he is taking a meaning which he's rejecting a zahir meaning, that overwhelming meaning, and he's taking al-marjuh meaning or underwhelming meaning. So he's doing ta'wil, like Ahnaf do, for example. Now, on the face of it, this ta'wil is fasid in the sense unacceptable, unless they have some other reasons. Of course, Ahnaf have their other reason, but on the face of it, this ta'wil is unacceptable. If we just limit to this hadith, in this hadith, there doesn't seem to be any literal or linguistic sense to take Imra as girl rather than any woman, because that's its zahir, overwhelming meaning. So unless there are some other non-linguistic reasons, Imra here means woman. So this is an example of a word which has more than one meaning, but its overwhelming meaning, it has one overwhelming meaning, and that meaning is Al-zahir. So the zahir meaning of this word Imra is any woman, and muawwal meaning would be a girl, for example. In that case, you would have to bring in some other reasons, and if you can't bring a strong other reason, then your ta'wil is fasid or unacceptable. Anyway, so we'll stop here. I think we have enough background now in understanding an-nas and zahir to deal with Imam Razi's al-Qanun and Kulli in our next session, whenever we take up that. Thank you.